You can learn a lot about an era by looking at how people of that era imagined the future. Was it bright and hopeful and full of flying cars? Or was it dark and dreary and full of flying cars? Fiction will inevitably be colored by the time that creates it, and in few genres is it as obvious as it is in science fiction. And in few subgenres is it as obvious as it is in cyberpunk. Born out of a 1980s shaped by technological revolution, boundless capitalism, paranoid orientalism, and a nuclear war hanging in the air, cyberpunk is one of the most distinct and most depressing visions of the future. Everything is bleak and cold and rainy, people are poor and exploited, and even the robots are sad. Judging by the longevity of the genre, it definitely struck a nerve. In many ways, the world we are currently living in is closer to the cyberpunk dystopia than it has ever been before. Global resources are distributed ever more inequitably, putting more and more money into the hands of fewer and fewer people for every year that passes. Corporations are growing larger, authoritarian politics are gaining ground, and our oceans are nearing their boiling point. Pilots in office chairs are drone bombing children on the other side of the planet. But still, cyberpunk doesn't really feel like our future. Cyberpunk is and always has been linked tightly with the era that created it. It still feels like a potential future that could have resulted from the 80s, but never did. The 80s still live on in everything from the slang to the aesthetics to the view on technology. Just as steampunk is an alternate future based on steam power, cyberpunk is an alternate future based on floppy disks. It might not be without its relevance, but it's not ours. Which punk is ours is a bit hard to answer. When the liberal optimism of the late 90s and early aughts broke through the dark clouds of cyberpunk, we instead got a pure white, Apple-branded future where exposed circuit boards and tangled wires were hidden behind smooth panels of polished chrome. We learned to stop worrying and love the Roomba. But the IKEA kitchen punk doesn't feel like it belongs to the now either. It's a product of a time 10 years and endless eons ago, when infinite growth still felt like an option just as long as you put a fair trade sticker on it. When the future still existed. Maybe that's why our punk is so hard to find, because the future simply doesn't exist anymore, at least not the way it used to. We're on the edge of a cliff and can't bring ourselves to look down. So we keep saving up for retirements that might never come and take flights to sunny beaches to momentarily distract ourselves from the melting polar ice caps. The old future is dying and solarpunk struggles to be born. Now is the time of apocalypses. Instead of trying to imagine the world we are headed towards, we imagine the new world that will rise from our ashes. We get to see the aftermath of the apocalypse again and again because the apocalypse has to be what we're headed towards. This world is doomed, so we put our hopes in the next one. But dreaming of a doomsday isn't more constructive than fantasizing about salvation. They are just different ways of closing our eyes to the now and ignoring the problems that will actually shape our tomorrow. Our future won't be a cataclysm in which everything falls apart all at once. No grand crescendo of misery. The future will be a slow descent into toxic sludge. Which punk is ours is a bit hard to answer, but Norco makes an attempt. On first blush, it's easy to mistake Norco for cyberpunk. The darkness and the misery sure is there, the giant corporations and the tiny people. But Norco is not based on the fears of the 80s. The future in Norco is very distinctly based on our present. Norco shows us a world where technology has kept marching ever forward, but without materially improving the lives of people who need it. Automation does not bring freedom, but unemployment, and all we get from smarter phones are more efficient gig apps. The pharmaceutical industry has made great strides in the field of profit maximizing. And shitposting Redditors form Christo-fascist cults. Welcome to the future. Perhaps the greatest anachronism of cyberpunk is not the continued use of the word cyber, but it's fuel agnosticism. In derivatives like steampunk and dieselpunk, the energy source is central, but in cyberpunk, the energy is kinda just there. The computers are what is interesting, not the electricity powering them. In Norco, the oil refineries tower over everything you do. The oil company running them is simultaneously killing the local community and keeping it alive. Gas Pirate Lucky tells us that he doesn't hate the company who is calling for his arrest. Without them, everybody would be out of a job. Is gasoline punk our future? Or maybe our present? Norco turns its eyes on all of the ugliest parts of society and refuses to blink. The game forces us to find the beauty in all that ugly, not in an attempt to hide or ignore the reality, but because there is no other way to survive. The world will not end. It will just relentlessly keep going. When light pollution drowns out the stars, we will look up at the fires of the oil refineries.